Zoom meeting, that intuition and analysis, they go side by side, hand in hand, and we termed these two factors as science and art. Intuition is like more like the art, and the analysis is more like science. So most organizations can benefit from strategic management, which is based upon integrating intuition and analysis in decision making. Okay. Remember one thing, that the external environment is subjected to two types of conditions. The first is uncertainty, and the second is complexity. And remember that when the uncertainty and complexity is very high, your analysis would become weak. And when the uncertainty and complexity is low, your analysis would become strong. So when the analysis is weak, and that is the situation when there is high level of uncertainty and higher level of complexity, so you rely more on intuition. Okay. And as the environment becomes less complex, and as the environment becomes less uncertain, so intuition would be used, but analysis would have its more importance. Okay, so that is how these two things, the analysis and the intuition, they go side by side. So intuition is particularly useful for making decisions in situations of great uncertainty or little precedent. Little precedent would mean that we do not have any historical background with us. We do not have any historical records with us, so that we cannot predict about the future based upon our trend in the past. So that would be again the situation when there would be intuition more in practice as compared to the analysis. Okay, because for analysis, you always need to have certain records, certain information. And if the records and information is not available, analysis would not be practical. Now, next topic your book is talking about is adapting to change. The example your book has given is about the second largest bookstore chain in the United States, known as Borders Group, declared bankruptcy in 2011. Now, the people who are selling the books are even unable to manage themselves, and they were taken up as the second largest bookstore chain in the United States. Okay? That means we're talking about a big business, and it declared bankruptcy in 2011 as the firm had not adopted well to changes in book retailing from traditional bookstore shopping to customers buying online, preferring digital books to hard copies. And again, that is one of the stories we have out of the many instances in which the big organizations which once ruled the world, they are no more there. For example, you might have heard about Kodak, you know, one of the best brands we used to have for the camera films, but they never thought about the changes taking place in digitalization and the technological convergence. And nowadays, you would not be able to even hear the name of Kodak in the photography industry. Okay, same is the case with so many other brands as well. Certain mobile phone companies were not able to, you know, meet up with the pace. For example, once the Nokia was the world famous brand, but as they did not adopt it to the change, so they were left behind, and Samsung and Apple, they all came in front. So there are so many examples that we have when the organizations did not respond to the upcoming changes of the future. So eventually those even big names are out of context now. Okay, Borders was on the brink of financial collapse before being acquired in July 2011 by Direct Brands, and then the Direct Brands tried their level best to uphold the repute and uphold the brand of Borders and its business to the limits which they could have done. Now, key terms in strategic management we need to focus upon. The first key term we have is competitive advantage. Okay, now the competitive advantage would mean anything that a firm does especially well compared to rival firms, right? Just to elaborate the concept of comparative advantage, let me quote a sequence between different terms that how competitive advantage is being created. The sequence starts from your internal audit. Okay, once the firm does the internal audit, and from internal audit, it gets the list of strengths and weaknesses. Okay, it would study its different functional areas, it would study its culture, it would study its management processes, it would study its resources, and out of all the functional areas, resources, culture, management processes, they would collect the list of strengths and weaknesses. Okay, once the list of strengths and weaknesses are, you know, composed, we take the best strengths out of all the strengths available. The best, by the expression of best strengths, I mean to say the strengths which are of vital importance to the organization. Okay, it can be skillful labor, it can be finances, it can be some specialized customized machinery. So those skillful labors, financial capital, or customized machinery, which is of vital importance for an organization, that strength would be known as core competency. Okay, out of the list of all the strengths, you have taken up best strengths, most critical strengths, and those most critical strengths would be now known as core competencies. Okay, core competency would mean the best things which you can do. So out of those core competencies, when you compare them with your when you compare them with your competitor's core competency, so it would become competitive advantage if your core competency is better than the core competency of the competitor. Okay, so that is how the strengths are related with competitive advantage. I repeat again, you collect your strengths. Out of those strengths, you pick your core competencies. Out of your core competencies, you compare those with competitors, and those which are better than competitors would become competitive advantage. Okay, so the definition on the slide is anything that a firm does especially well compared to rival firms. Another expression we commonly use in the strategic management is strategists. So the individuals who are most responsible for the success or failure of an organization. Okay, so they are the strategists. So the strategist can be the entrepreneur, him or herself, or the strategist can be someone else who is hired to make a particular strategy. High performance working system, when we use this word HPWS, high performance working system is actually an organization. Okay, and that organization would be having certain core competencies. Okay, but core competencies are not your high performance working system. System is another thing. Core competency is actually the strength of the system. Okay, the specialized strength which the system is carrying. And the strategist is the person who will be sorting out all these things. Now, a little commentary on that what is a vision statement. Vision statement answers the question, what do we want to become? Okay, in the future. So vision statement is always futuristic. Often considered the first step in strategic planning. Okay. Then comes the mission statement. The mission statement is enduring statements of purpose. As I defined it earlier, that the mission statement is reason for existence, or the mission statement is purpose of being. So the mission statement is enduring statements of purpose that distinguish one business from other similar firms. Okay. So unanimity of purpose is also demonstrated in the mission statement. Mission statement identifies the scope of a firm's operations in product and market terms. Okay, mission statement identifies the scope of a firm's operations in product and market terms. As I defined earlier, that the mission statement would be talking about three things: who we are, what we do, whom we serve. So same is the point which is elaborated in the slide, that identifies the scope of a firm's operations in product and market terms. So mission addresses the basic question that faces all strategists: what is our business? The basic definition you have for your business. Okay. Then there are two types of mission statements. It can be a broad mission statement and it can be a narrow mission statement. So that would be discussed, inshallah, in the next coming chapters. Our core competencies are the strengths we have, right? And supposedly the skillful employees, the skillful workers, they are having the best skills in the market, in the industry, and you call them your core competency. They can be the strategists, but not all of them. Strategists is a particular designation who are the people who are going to make a particular strategy either at corporate level or at business level or at functional level. Okay. So generally speaking, suppose at a departmental level, the head of that department, the manager or director, whatever is the designation, is the person who is going to craft the strategy for long-term objectives. Okay. So after crafting that particular strategy, all the individuals working in that department would be acting accordingly, according to the strategy which is being developed. Okay. So strategists in an organizational context are particular people. Otherwise, I can understand to the extent that everybody is making a strategy according to their own perspective, but the own perspective strategy is not something we are focusing upon at corporate level. Okay. External opportunities and threats. That is the next topic we need to talk about. When we talk about external opportunities and threats, remember that we divide organization's external environment into two parts. The organizational external environment is divided into a specific environment and general environment. Okay. The specific environment can also be known as task environment, and the general environment can also be known as societal environment. Okay. So these are the two divisions of the external environment we have. These are not tangible divisions. These are not physical divisions. These divisions are made just to make our understanding of the external environment more clear. When we talk about task environment or specific environment, the constituents of this environment are customer, competitor, supplier, public pressure group, distributor, retailers, wholesalers, competitors. So these are the constituents of specific or task environment, which are also known as industry. When we talk about societal environment or general environment, which is the outermost environment of an organization, so those would include the constituents in that the constituents in that societal environment would include political situation of the country, economic scenarios of the country, socio-cultural environment, technological environment, demographic aspects of that particular place, technological aspects of that particular place. So these are the things which are present in the societal environment or general environment, which is usually taken up at the level of national market. Okay, so we have divided external environment into two parts. I repeat again, task environment or societal environment. Okay, so what we would do, that we would conduct an audit of all these constituents. We'll conduct the audit of political environment in a country. We'll conduct audit of technological aspects in a country. We'll conduct audit of the legal aspects of a country. We'll conduct audit of economic aspects, socio-cultural aspects, demographic aspects of the country. And out of all that audit, we are going to have a list of opportunities and threats. And when we would conduct the audit at industry level, in which the customer, competitor, supplier, public pressure group, distributors are there, so we'll try to collect the opportunities and threats from there as well. Okay, so the external audit would give us the detail of opportunities and threats. That is what is written on the slide. Now we can read it from there, that external opportunities and external threats refer to economic, social, cultural, demographic, environmental, political, legal, governmental, technological, and competitive trends, which is obviously coming from the competitors, that could significantly benefit or harm an organization in the future. Okay, so that is the reason we need to focus upon what is going on in the outside environment. Some of the opportunities which your author has identified as an introduction, they are computer hacker problems are increasing, so that's a threat. Intense price competition is plaguing most firms, so that is a threat. Unemployment and underemployment rates remain high, that's a threat. Interest rates are rising, that becomes a threat. Product life cycles are becoming shorter, that can be a threat. State and local governments are financially weak, so that can again be a threat. And reverse to all these situations would become the opportunity. For example, if I read the first statement again, the computer hacker problems are decreasing. So if the computer hacker problems are decreasing, that becomes an opportunity. If the price competition is not much, so that is opportunity. If the unemployment and underemployment rates are not very high, that's an opportunity. If the interest rates are low, that's an opportunity. Okay, so all these things can become an opportunity. All these things can become a threat based upon that in which context they are going to affect on us. The key terms in strategic management continued, and now we are focusing upon internal strengths and weaknesses. Okay, later on, these are going to be the whole chapters. Like the third chapter, we'll be talking about opportunity and threats only. In the fourth chapter, we'll be talking about strengths and weaknesses only. Okay, so for the time being, just try to comprehend their definition. Internal strengths and weaknesses, it says that an organization's controllable activities that are performed especially well or poorly. So if they are performed well, they are strength. If they are performed poorly, they are weaknesses. And for that purpose, again, we have to conduct an internal audit. And that internal audit would be the audit of the culture, audit of the resources, audit of the management processes, audit of the functional areas, which would include marketing audit, finance audit, production audit, HR audit. So we'll be doing audit of every functional area. And remember that these audits and the results we are going to generate as a set of strengths and weaknesses would be determined relative to competitors, right? So a strength is a strength when it is better than the competitor. A weakness is a weakness when it is less than the competitor. Now, the first chapter is talking about the objectives. Objectives are always smart. Remember this rule of thumb. Objectives are always smart. Okay, and by the word smart, I mean to say specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time framed. So objectives are specific results that an organization seeks to achieve in pursuing its basic mission. Okay, objectives might be long-term, which means more than a year. So we generally categorize objectives in three ways based upon the time frames. The first can be the short-term objective, which might be up to a year. Then it can be medium-term objective, which can be up to 1 to 3 years or 5 years, and which can be long-term objectives, which can be more than 5 years. But these margin lines related to the time frames are only approximations. Okay, there is no fixed rule about it, but just for your understanding, we say that the short term is up to a year, medium term is up to 1 to 3, 5 years, and long term is like 25 years, 50 years. Okay, so objectives, according to the book, the author, what he's trying to say, specific results that an organization seeks to achieve in pursuing its basic mission. Okay, so specific results, when we say specific results, that means that objectives are always quantitative. Okay, so long term means more than 1 year. As I told you, first it becomes like medium term, then it would shape into long term. And objectives should be challenging, measurable, consistent, reliable, and clear. So that is what I was trying to relate with the word SMART: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time framed. In addition to that, always remember that objectives are of three types. There are financial objectives, there are strategic objectives, and there are operational objectives. Always remember, objectives are of three types. And whatever objective any organization, either manufacturing or services, they're going to craft, all those objectives are always going to be of one of these three categories. Okay. Financial objectives would mean 5% increase in revenue in next 1 year. Operational objective would mean 2.3% increase in productivity in our operations in next 6 months. And strategic objective would be that we want to increase our customer satisfaction by certain percentage, right? So these are the types of objectives we set for the organization. An objective basically covers what part of financial functional aspects, and how to achieve those objectives. I told you that is what we call strategy. So the strategies are the means by which how long-term objectives will be achieved. Okay, strategies may include geographic expansion, as I was telling you, from local to regional, regional to national, national to international, international to multinational, multinational to global. It might be diversification, which may include conglomerate or concentric diversification, which might include acquisition. It may include product development, market penetration, and market development. And these three, product development, and market penetration, they are also known as ends of metric strategies. Okay, so market development would mean that you would go to the new markets, which is also related with the geographic expansion. Product development is linked with that fact that you have to increase the features and functionalities of your product, or design entirely a new product, which sometimes calls innovation. And market penetration would mean that you use the same product in the same market, but increase its sales. Okay, so these are types of strategies we need to come up with. Retrenchment is another type of strategy we have, in which we try to reduce the cost of our operations through downsizing, through right sizing, through voluntary retirement schemes. So there are many ways, consolidation. So there are many ways with which we try to reduce the cost of our business. And that would be known as a retrenchment strategy. And when we try to sell the parts of the business, that would be divestiture. And when we sell the whole business, that would be the liquidation. And obviously, there is joint venture strategy as well. The details of all these strategies would be coming in the next coming chapters. The next term we have is typically defined as annual objectives. Annual objectives are short-term milestones. As I told you, up to 1 year is a short-term objective. So annual objectives are short-term milestones that organizations must achieve to reach long-term objectives. With long-term objectives, as I told you, maybe like ranging from 5 years, 10 years, 25 years. So objectives should be measurable, quantitative, challenging, realistic, consistent, and prioritized. I told you that earlier. And objectives should be established at the corporate, divisional, and functional levels in a large organization. Okay, so that's how the objectives are defined. Objectives are linked, and objectives are prioritized. But remember, in case of a small venture, in case of an entrepreneurial business, all the levels are merged into one level, one hierarchy. Okay, but when that entrepreneurial business is expanded and develops into a big corporation, so those merged levels are now distinguishable in terms of corporate, business, and functional. If you have any question, you can always ask in the Zoom group chat room. There are some sample strategies in action in 2011, according to your book. He's talking about the Skype business, that how Skype, ruled the online video conferencing world. Then there is a fast food Italian eatery located in many mall food courts, and how did they develop? So you can read these examples from the book as well. Key terms in strategic management. The next term we have is policies. In the terms of policies, it says that policies means by which annual objectives will be achieved. Policies would also include guidelines, rules, and procedures. And policies are also the guidelines for crafting our strategy. As it is saying the first statement, that the means by which annual objectives will be achieved. Okay? So policies provides us the means, and strategy tells us the how. So policies guides to decision making and address repetitive or recurring situations. Okay, so whenever there is a new policy coming in, so it will be affecting the strategies, it will be affecting the people, it will be affecting the systems. So strategies and the objectives and the workings and the operations, they are all guided by the policies. Now, the strategic management model summarized in the question form, as we are looking in the slide, where are we now means your current situation. I discussed about these things in the previous lecture as well. So once your now is determined and clear, the second question would be, where do we want to go? And once your future direction is set, objectives are set, vision, mission is set, the next would be, how are we going to get there? And I told you this how is always addressing the strategy. This is a comprehensive strategic management model. I wonder the font is a little small, but I'll be briefing you through my voice. And eventually you can read it from the book in detail. The first step in this model is talking about vision and mission, which would be discussed in chapter number 2. Once the mission vision, which means the direction for the firm, is decided, the next step would be perform external audit in chapter 3 and perform internal audit in chapter 4. Once we have gone through these two audits, we'll be having the details related to the SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We'll be moving to the 5th chapter, which is talking about establish long-term objectives. Once the long-term objectives are decided, the 6th chapter would be talking about generate, evaluate, and select strategies. Once the strategies are generated, evaluated, and selected, the 7th chapter of the book would be talking about implement strategies. The 8th chapter would be talking about implementing issues related to strategies. The 9th chapter is related to evaluation techniques. And from 9th chapter, there comes the feedback. And in the feedback loop, we have 10th chapter related to business ethics and social responsibility and environmental sustainability. And in the 11th chapter, we'll be talking about global and international issues. Okay, so that's how the whole progress of our course and the book and the slides would be carried on. You can also see on this particular slide that from the chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we have strategy formulation stages. From chapter number 7 to 8, we have strategy implementation stages. And chapter number 9 would be mainly talking about strategy evaluation. Okay, if you have any question, you can always ask in the Zoom group chat room. Now, there are certain benefits of strategic management. It says that historically, the principal benefit of strategic management has been to help organizations formulate better strategies through the use of a more systematic, logical, and rational approach to strategic choice. Okay, so historically, there has been many evidences, many research findings, which has narrated that strategic management is always beneficial for organizations. The first benefit we can look at is the effective communication. Okay, and the communication would also be the key to successful strategic management. So through dialogue, when you follow strategic management principles, so through dialogue and participation, managers and employees become committed to supporting the organization. Okay, so communication is the basis through which the strategy formulation, implementation, and evaluation would be carried on. The certain benefits to a firm that does strategic planning. So according to this flow sheet diagram, we can have the association of enhanced communication with the results. When we talk about enhanced communication, it means dialogue and participation. Through dialogue and participation, we can have deeper and improved understanding of others' views, that what they are thinking, what are their suggestions for improvement. Through that deeper and improved understanding, we have greater commitment. And once the commitment is there, people are committed to the objectives and strategies, and they are committed to the work. The outcome would be the result that all managers and employees on a mission to help the firm succeed. And through that participatory contribution and style and working, organizations, they achieve their long-term survival and above average return. There are certain financial benefits associated with strategic planning and management as well. For example, businesses using strategic management concepts show significant improvement in sales profitability and productivity compared to firms without systematic planning activities. Okay, so that is the first benefit we can have in financial terms when we use strategic management concepts. Now, there can be a question in your mind that there are many businesses operating in our golden triangle. By the term golden triangle, we mean to say Gujranwala, Gujarat, Sialkot. So there are many entrepreneurial ventures, businesses working in this part of the world, and they are doing businesses of millions and billions, but perhaps their owners, they might have not seen the universities in their life, or they might not have studied or got the degrees, but still they are doing very fine business. So how can they do very fine business without following the typical strategic management principles? The typical answer to that discussion is that they are following every bit of strategic management principle, but they might not be documenting it. That is the difference. They are following, they do have a certain direction in their mind about their business, and that certain direction is what we call mission and vision, but they might not be having any written documentation about it. They do make objectives, but those list of objectives might not be documented as such. So what we have in our economy, what we have in our local sector is that we usually lack formalization, and we usually lack documentations related to the business. And when we involve those documentations and formalizations in our business, that absolutely becomes the strategic management implications. Okay. Secondly, remember that out of all those aspects which the person is having in his mind, he or she might always be having an intuition. And how he has got that intuition? He has obtained that intuition through experience and exposure. Okay, after working for years in a particular industry, that person has developed an intuition that how to develop, how to progress, how to meet its objectives. Okay, along with that, if the person is further developing its business at a certain stage, that person might be requiring the people with the subject knowledge details, and those people would be there for him to come up with the documentations. Okay, so read this line again with me, that businesses using strategic management concepts show significant improvement in sales, profitability, and productivity compared to firms without systematic planning activities. The second aspect is that high-performing firms seem to make more informed decisions with good anticipation of both short and long-term consequences. Our time for this Zoom session is getting over. I'll be sending you the link for the next Zoom session in few minutes.